Okay, so let me just say one thing. I forgot one assumption in the theorem about the function f. I want them to be either bounded or non-negative. Forgot that. It's important in the proof, you will see it. So now let's turn to the proof. Maybe I will start here with just a comment. The first comment is that it's enough to consider the bounded case. Because, okay, it is enough to consider the case of bounded functions. If they are not bounded, what you do is you just consider the functions f, t, let me write them like that, minimum between ft and k for some large real number k, right? Then they are bounded by construction. Let me, how do I want to write that? Okay, yes, if they are not bounded, they are non-negative, right? If they are non-negative, I can take the minimum between ft and k. Then this is bounded by construction, then I can apply everything. And then since they are non-negative, they have no difficulties in applying the monotone convergence theorem to send k to infinity. And use monotone convergence to let k go to plus infinity. Okay, so that's just one comment to say that I will only work with bounded functions. So let's work. So what we are going to do in detail is the one-dimensional case. So for the one-dimensional torus, and then we'll prove that the result is true in higher dimension by induction on the dimension. So let's start with the dimension 1 case. Okay. And then I will introduce some notations. I will write n. This will be L over 2b. Okay. I know that L over b is even, so I can still divide by 2, and I get an integer. Okay. And the function ft that are here, they are just function f0, f1, f2, and minus 1. They are indexed by element of the torus of size 2n. Okay. And then we introduce some functional, which I will denote by capital F. So f of f0, f1, f2n minus 1. This is just what we see on the left-hand side, except for the absolute value. So this is just the expected value of the product over t, which goes from 0 to 2n minus 1, f, t, t. Okay. So this defines a multilinear functional. Okay, it's a multilinear functional on a lambda bilocal function. All these guys are all lambda bilocal. By assumption, on lambda bilocal function. Okay. Now, in dimension 1, there is observation. Let me say it like that. Observation. Any function, any lambda bilocal function f, or for any lambda bilocal function f, and any t, which belongs to 0, 2n minus 1, the function ft, the one which is obtained by reflection up to the cell t, is either a translate of the original function f, or a translate of a function which I will call f bar, where f bar of omega 0, omega 1, omega b minus 1, omega b, omega L minus 1, yes. This is just f of omega b minus 1, omega 0, let's say omega L minus 1, omega b. Okay, f only sees these guys, right? It's lambda b local, so it only depends on the first b guys. Okay, and then I obtain f bar by reflecting f. Okay, if I make a picture, so the one-dimensional torus is like that. These are our cells. 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. So I have some function f here, and then I obtain f bar by making a reflection of f through this line, and then obtain, if I reflect f bar through this line, obtain again something which is like just a translate of f here, okay? And then if I translate here, I get a translate of f bar, and so on and so forth. Right? I'm writing f and f bar, you have to imagine that these are translates. I will make a lot of pictures like that, which are very imprecise, but it should just convey the meaning of what we are doing. Okay, so there are only two types of reflection. Either I get f or f bar up to translation. Okay, so that will be somewhat convenient. And now what we want to prove in terms of this f, so our goal, prove that the absolute value of f0, f2n minus 1, this is smaller than the product of t, which goes from 0 to 2n minus 1, of f of ft to the power 1 over 2n. Right? That's just I've just written the right-hand side. So this expectation here is again f applied to the same function ft 2n times. Okay. 2 to the power 1 over the size of the torus, in dimension 1 just 2n. Okay. And then I take the product of the whole choice of the function t, ft. Okay. So that's what we want to prove. Let me call this star. I can refer to it when I need. Okay, that's our goal. Okay. So now let's make some observation on the functional f. It has some nice properties, observations. The first one is that f of f0, f1, f2n minus 2, f2n minus 1. Okay. This is the same thing as f of f2n minus 1 bar, f0 bar, f1 bar, f2n minus 2 bar. Okay. So it follows immediately from the definition, but let me just make some pictures of the type as above, just to convince you that this might be the case. So what do I have? So I don't want to write f many times, so I will just write the indices. So I have, when I take this functional f here, I have f0, which lives on the first block. Then I have the image of f1. So f, I will just write 1 bar. Okay. Then we have 2, and then we have 3 bar. Right? Something like that. That's what you have on this side. And then what I'm saying is that this, so the expectation value of that, this is the same thing as the expectation value of 3 bar, 0, 1 bar, 2. Why? Just because I've used the lambda b periodicity of the measure. So I know that if this, we are on the torus, right? This goes around, this is a circle, right? So this point is the same as this point. Okay, so it goes like that. So I've just moved the origin, instead of putting the origin here, I've moved the origin there. Okay, and then I'm looking at my circle from here, I see 3 bar, 0, 1 bar, 2, which is exactly what is here. So here it's the b periodicity. But now, what we have here is essentially f of f3, f0, f1, f2. Okay, it's just change, except that I have a 3 bar, so it's really the same thing as 3 bar. Then the 0 bar is 0 bar bar, 1 bar, and 2 bar bar, right? So I've taken the function 3 bar, 0 bar, 1 bar, 2 bar, and I take their product with suitable reflections, and I get exactly what is written here. So this transformation, the fact that I can make a cyclic permutation of my functions in the functional f, I can make a cyclic rotation, and the only thing that changes is that if you make an odd a cyclic rotation of odd order, you get bars on top of the function. This I will call a property C for cyclic, right? That's something which will be very useful. Then another property that will be also very useful to us is a consequence of the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality we saw last week, applied to this setting. Okay, so second thing, I claim that f of f0, fn minus 1, fn, f2n minus 1. Okay. I claim that this, say square, this is smaller than f of f0, fn minus 1, fn minus 1, f0 times f of f2n minus 1, fn, fn, f2n minus 1. Then that we have this property, which I will call CS for Cauchy-Schwarz. It will be a consequence of Cauchy-Schwarz. So let me explain that. Again, with essentially pictures, but let me start with just this guy. This guy, I can write it f0, f2n minus 1. This is what? This is by definition, I can write it as the expected value of the product over all t from 0. Instead of going to 2n minus 1, I just go to n minus 1. Okay. Then I have f t t. This is just the first n term of this product. And then I can write the other terms as theta of f 2n minus 1 minus t. So let me make a picture. So what I'm saying is the following. So I have again my function. So 0 is living here, 1 bar, 2, 3 bar. And then I'm saying that this expectation is the same thing as the expectation where I take here in the first cell, I take the function 0 times theta of 3. Why? Because the function theta of 3 is precisely 3 bars sent here. Right? Theta is with respect to this, consider this theta, and theta which is acting here. So if I take the function 3 here, and I apply theta on the function 3, f3, okay, take the function of f3, I apply theta of f3, it's just giving me f3 bar in this cell. Okay? It's sending this cell over this cell. The function f3 is sent to the function f3 with a bar on this cell. Okay, so to have a 3 bar here is the same as to have a theta of 3 here. And then here I have a 1 bar and a theta of 2 bar. Theta of 2 bar because then when I apply theta to f2 bar, it sends f2 bar here, it creates f2 on this side, right, which is exactly what I want. And then I have just a function which are identically 1 in these two cells. Nothing happens there. Okay. But then we see that we have really the expected value of the product of 0, 1, and in the first cell I have 0 and theta of 2n minus 1, so exactly what is written here. So I have in the first cell, the cell t equals 0, I have f of 0, but f of 2n minus 1 also. It's also sent in the cell 0, okay, with a theta. And then the same for 1, I have f1, but I have also f2n minus 2, and so on and so forth. So this identity is just this observation. But now once you see that, it's clear that we are in a setting where we have the product of a function, which is 0, 1 bar, and the theta of another function, which is 3, 2 bar. And by Cauchy-Schwarz, this is smaller than, or say take square everywhere. This is smaller than what I get So I have my function was 0, 1 bar, so it's 0, 1 bar, and then I take theta of 0, theta of 1 bar. Theta of 0 gives me 0 bar, and theta of 1 bar gives me 1. And then for the function theta of 3, 2 bar, I get 3, 2 bar, but then the image of 3, which is a 3 bar, the image of 2 bar, which is a 2. Okay, again, through this reflection. Okay. So I'm just applying the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality of last week to the product, to this function, and theta of the product here of these functions. Right? Maybe I should write it also explicitly. So this is just the picture to see what is going on. But this I could have written this. I could have written as the expected value of the product t equals 0 to n minus 1 ftt theta of the product t equals 0 to n minus 1. So it's 2n minus 1 minus t. Right, and this is just that. And then you apply Cauchy-Schwarz on this thing, and you get this times that. Right? But there is a square, I guess. Oh no, here there is no square. If not, okay, let me put square everywhere. Okay, so this is equal to this, which is equal to that, and then you apply Cauchy-Schwarz to this, and you get exactly this product. But you should really try to think about it in a geometrical way. It will be very useful for later on. Okay. So that's the second property we need. Now there is a third property. I think I wanted to state it here. Yes, I wanted to state it here. So it's the fact that f of ft fixed on t, and take f of ft, and so on, always the same t. This is always non-negative for all t. 0 to n minus 1. And why is this the case? Well, f of ft, I can use this identity, particular case, or this one. F of ft is just this thing. So it's the expected value product. T equals 0 to n minus 1, ft t, theta of product t equals 0 to n minus 1. So I should put maybe parentheses. F 2n minus 1 minus t. Right, that's just the definition. I mean, just the computation we've made here, I apply it to the particular case. So that's in general. Now all our functions are given by the same ft. Okay, t is a very bad choice of notation. I should put s. But the t here is the same everywhere. And here I have t everywhere, and this is s. Okay. It's a particular case of this when all the functions that I consider are equal. So I just get this expression. But now it's very nice because the function I have here is the same as the function I have here. Okay, this is exactly the same as this. So I have something of the form, some function theta of the same function under mu, but mu is reflection positive, so this is non-negative. Okay, by reflection positivity of the measure. Any function theta of itself under a reflection positive measure gives you something non-negative. So why is it interesting, this inequality, the fact that f of ft is non-negative? If you look at the expression on this side, this star that we want to prove. Now assume that this function here on the left-hand side is equal to 0. If f of f0, f2n minus 1 is equal to 0, there is nothing to prove, because all these factors are non-negative, so 0 is always smaller than a product of non-negative function, there is nothing to prove. So this implies that star holds trivially if f of f0, f2n minus 1 is equal to 0. There is nothing to prove in this case. So without loss of generality, we assume from now on that we're in the non-trivial case, that is f of f0, f2n minus 1 in absolute value, it's strictly positive. Okay, so this was. So now I claim that as soon as this is true, as soon as this is strictly positive, then all this expectation here, all this f of ft, they are also strictly positive. Okay, donc claim, maybe I'll write it here. Claim say f of f0, f2n minus 1 strictly positive implies that f of ft is strictly positive for all t. Okay, so let's prove this. Indeed. And I will start by making the proof in the case n equal to 3. I will make the proof completely explicitly for n equal to 3 so that you see how it works. It's very simple, but it's simpler to see it on an example, and then we'll generalize it to arbitrary n. Indeed. Let's say, let's start with n equal to 3. Okay, so we have a function f of f0, f1, f2, f3, f4, f5. 2n is 6, so that's good. I think I need a piece of notation. I think I called it k. Let me just check the notation. Kn. So let me write Kn is the maximum over T of the sup norm of Ft. I said that we can assume that all these functions are bounded, so this quantity is finite, take the maximum, and I take all this to power 2n. Okay. So let me write that. This will be useful. And then what I want to do is I start with this and I apply. Okay, I don't have so many things I can do. So I have this Cauchy-Schwarz here, Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, which is one of the two properties I can use. And the other property I can use is this cyclicity, which is written there. So I'm just going to play with these two properties alternatively until I get what I want. Okay, so starting from here, this property is not gonna bring me much if I'm applying to this function. So the only thing I can do is start with Cauchy-Schwarz and hope for the best. And let's do it. So I'm applying this Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. This tells me that this is smaller than f of f0, f1, f2, f2, f1, f0 times f of f5, f4, f3, f3, f4, f5, and I need power 1/2 here and there. Right? Just using Cauchy-Schwarz in this particular case. Now, this function here, it's a product of all these functions which appears in the argument to power 1/2. So certainly the function f here is smaller than kn. So this is smaller than kn. Kn is equal to 3, so k3 to power 1/2. Okay, this quantity. So what I get is that this is smaller than k3 1/2 times the function f0, f1, f2, f2, f1, f0. Good. So I've used Cauchy-Schwarz. Now let's try to use this cyclicity property. So this is equal. So the k3 1/2 is still there. And what I will do is I want to bring this f0 next to its next to the other f0. Okay? So I will have f of. So if I do that, I'm applying once this, so I get bars everywhere. Not that it matters much. f0 bar, f0 bar, f1 bar, f2 bar, f2 bar, f1 bar. Right? Not done much. Now I iterate. So if you remember what we did here, we applied Cauchy-Schwarz with respect to this hyperplane, right? This plane. So I was reflecting this thing here. That's why I got 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 0. Okay. If I do it again with respect to, there is a 1/2 somewhere, right, which is missing. 1/2, 1/2. If I apply it again here, so Cauchy-Schwarz once more, Cauchy-Schwarz once more, I get doing the same thing. So I'm applying Cauchy-Schwarz and then bounding what comes out, one of the two factors by k. So I will get k3 to the power 1/2 plus 1/4, which will be 3/4. And then I will get f. And what do I get when for the first term? I get f0 bar, f0 bar, f1 bar, f1 bar, f0 bar, f0 bar to the power 1/4. Right? Just applied Cauchy-Schwarz. I'm reflecting this guy on this side. I get 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, which is what is written here. Okay? And a new factor k3 to the power 3/4 instead of k3 to the power 1/2. It's much better. Why is it much better? Now what do I have? Now I have 4 f0 which are contiguous. So now I will again use this cyclicity to bring all the 4 f0 next to each other. So this is equal to k3 3/4 f of, so I'm moving it twice, so I still have the bars. f0 bar, f0 bar, f0 bar, f0 bar, f1 bar, f1 bar. Right? Just use C. Okay? And now I'm doing it one more time, the last time. So let's do it one last time, Cauchy-Schwarz again. So I will get k3 to the power 7/8 and f. And what do I get when I make the usual reflections through this line? I get f0 bar, f0 bar, f0 bar. I have only f0 bar everywhere. Right, I have only f0 bars everywhere. So what does this mean? To the power 1/8 now. Right? It was 1/4 again. 1/4. When I use Cauchy-Schwarz, I lose a factor 2, power 2, so 1/8. So this implies that f of f0, 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 one of these ft, ft, ft that I want to control in the claim, right? F of f0, 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 this is larger or equal what? I take the k3 to the power 7/8 on the other side, so in front of this guy, and I raise everything to the power 8, so that I get rid of this 1/8. So what I get is k3 to the power 7, minus 7, and then f of f0, f1, f2n minus 1 to the power 8. Right? Now, this is just a positive number, and that by assumption in the claim, this f, sorry, I should have put the absolute value, of course. So this f here is strictly positive. So this is strictly positive, so everything is strictly positive, and I have proven that this guy is strictly positive. So now I have done it for f0, but obviously I can do it for any ft by just starting by rotating. If I want to prove it for f3, I use the cyclicity property to move f3 to the first point, and then to the first slot, and then I'm done. And okay, one thing I've used, which I've not said, but because I thought it was obvious, but just in case, this is clear that it's the same as that, right? Just the cyclicity property. You apply cyclicity once, and you get that. Right? When all the functions are equal, you can put bar or not, doesn't change anything. Okay, so that proves the result for f0, and then proves the result for C. Implies that f of ft is positive for all t. Right? So that proves the claim in the case n equal to 3. But it's clear that I've not used the fact that n is equal to 3 anywhere. Right? It's just so general n, you do exactly the same thing. So what we want to do is to use alternatively Cauchy-Schwarz and the cyclicity property in order to go from something where I had different function in each slot, like here, to some situation where all the functions are equal, right? Like that, like there. And then how many times do I have to apply this this property? Well, each time I make a reflection, the number of copies of f naught that I get doubles. I have 1, then I have 2, then I have 4, then I have 8, and I'm done. Okay? So I have to apply it, need to repeat, need to iterate the argument m times, where m is the smallest integer, such that 2 to the power m, since each time you apply this construction, you double the number of copies of f naught, and you want this to be larger or equal to the total numbers of slots, which is 2m. Okay. So you do exactly the same thing, you apply it m times, so this will imply that f of f naught, f1, I will do it like that, f naught, f naught, f naught, this will be larger than k3 to the power 1 minus 2 to the m times f of f0, f1, f2n minus 1 to the power 2 to the m. And this is strictly positive. Exactly by the same argument as we have just done. Okay, so this claim is true. And why is it useful, this claim? It allows me to rewrite our target, the target inequality we want to prove, which I call star, in a slightly different way by normalizing the function f. So let me try to do that now. So let g of f0, f2n minus 1, the new functional, which is defined as follows. It's just f of f0, f2n minus 1, divided by the product for t from 0 to 2n minus 1, f of ft 1 over 2n. I can divide by this quantity because I know that this is strictly positive. That's the claim, which tells me that this quantity, the denominator, is strictly positive. So there is no problem in defining g. Now, I won't do it because it's very easy. You can just check, easy to check. G satisfies analogues of the cyclicity property and Cauchy-Schwarz. You just apply it to the numerator, and you see that everything is going well, and you get exact analog of the cyclicity and Cauchy-Schwarz for G. So that's good. And now, another thing that is easy to check is that G of, you take any function, lambda be local function, you apply it f times. You use it 2n times in the function G. Okay? So you have G of f. This, if you plug it here, you get f of f divided by the product of f of f to power 1 over 2m. This gives you 1, okay? Obviously, for any f. Any f lambda be local. Okay. Good. So now, star, which is what we want to prove, so what was star telling you? Star was telling you, sorry, I want to put absolute value here. What is star telling you? Star is telling you that the numerator here, divided by, that the numerator is always smaller than the denominator. Okay, that's what star is telling you, that this is always smaller than that. That means that this is equivalent to saying that G of f0, f2n minus 1 is always smaller than 1. Right? So same thing. But now this is the same thing since G, if you take 2n times the same function as argument for the functional G, this is given by 1, which is exactly what you have here. This is telling you that G attains its maximum when you take 2n tuples composed of the same function. So G reaches its maximum on 2n tuples of lambda-b local functions local function. What I mean is that it's maximal for things like g of f. Okay. So that's what I want to prove. So proving star is the same as proving that if you take any family of 2n minus 1 functions here, you cannot do better than taking 2n times the same function. Okay, so that's what I'm going to prove now. It's in fact very simple. So fix some function f0, f1, f2n minus 1. We fix them once and for all for the moment. And then let g0, g1, g2n minus 1 be such that the following conditions are satisfied. So the first one is that gi, or gt, I used t up to now, gt belongs to f0, f1, f2n minus 1. So for each of these functions, I'm choosing one of the functions here. I can choose several times the same one. Doesn't matter. But each of the functions gt is one of these functions. The second is that I want I want g0, g1, g2n minus 1 is a maximizer of g. I want this. And then 3, a priori I can have many maximizers. I want to choose a maximizer which has some minimality property, which is the following one. G0, G1, G2n minus 1 contains the longest contiguous subsequence composed of a single function. What I mean is the following. So G0, G1, G2n minus 1. Somewhere inside I can find some function, say f tilde, and then I get something else. Okay, f hat, f bar, whatever. And then at some point I start again having f tilde. Okay, something like that. Then this I can find in this sequence of functions g0, g2n minus 1 a subsequence which is here in this picture, where don't forget that I'm always working on a circle, so these guys are contiguous to these guys. So where I see a constant subsequence, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde. Okay? So among all the maximizers that I have in the point 2, I choose one for which the length of the longest subsequence of this type is the longest possible. Okay? Among all the maximizers. Maybe there are several choices, then you choose any one of the maximizers which have this property. Okay? But certainly I want one which has this property. Okay. Let, say, k be the length of this subsequence. The conclusion I want to prove, which is that the fact that g reaches its maximum on a lambda-b local function, is the same as saying that k is equal to 2n. Okay. Among all the maximizers, the one which has the longest subsequence, which is constant, has a subsequence of length 2n, which means that it's evaluated at 2n times the same function. Okay, so that means that this would be one of the maximizers. Not saying that there are not other maximizers, but certainly this would be one of the maximizers. Okay, so we want to show that k is equal to 2n. star is equivalent to k is equal to 2n. So let's show that this is indeed true. Suppose that k is smaller than 2n. And let's compute. So we have g of, okay, let me do it like that. So without loss of generality, using the cyclicity property that f and g both enjoy, I can assume that this constant subsequence, it occupies the first k slots. Okay, otherwise I rotate to put them in the first k slot. We can assume that g0 equal g1 equal gk minus 1 is equal to this constant function f tilde. Okay? Good. Now, let's compute g of g0, g1, gk minus 1. This, as I said, okay, let's do it like that. As I said, G satisfies an analog of, again, a Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. I mean, exactly as F. It inherits from F Cauchy-Schwarz type inequality. So this is smaller. If I cut it again in the middle, as usual, this will be smaller than G of G0, G1, Gn minus 1, Gn minus 1, G0 times, so let me put a square here, times G of G2n minus 1, okay, we go down up to Gn, and then we go up again, Gn, G2n minus 1, okay, that's certainly, okay, it's just Cauchy-Schwarz. And now I'm using the fact that by 2, this sequence G0, G1, G2n minus 1 is maximizer of G. So this quantity which I have here, this is certainly smaller than G by 2. Is certainly smaller than G of G0, G1, G2n minus 1. Because this is the largest value I can get. Okay. But that means that now I divide on both sides by G of G0, G1, G2n minus 1. And I conclude that G of G0, G1, G2n minus 1 is smaller than G of, and we have this guy, which is G0, G1, Gn minus 1, Gn minus 1, G0. Right? But what does it tell you? This is the maximizer of G, and this is bigger. That means that this is also a maximizer of G. Okay. This inequality must be an identity, and the sequence I get here is also a maximizer. So this implies that the sequence G0, Gn minus 1, Gn minus 1, G0 is a maximizer of G. Right? But now we know that here I have a sequence of length k which is composed of the function f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde. But that means that here I also have a sequence of length k which is composed of the function f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, f tilde, because it's just the reflection of this. Right? That means that now we have a sequence of contiguous subsequence of length 2k. Right? So this one contains a contiguous subsequence composed of f tilde of length, well, the minimum between 2k and 2n. Cannot be larger than 2n. But this, by assumption, since we assume that k is smaller than 2n, this is larger than k, and this contradicts 3. contradicts 3. It contradicts the fact that I've chosen the maximizer which has the longest such subsequence. I've constructed one which has strictly larger ones. Okay, so this means that this is wrong and then this is true and then star holds. So we have proved the result in dimension 1. Right? Now I need 5 more minutes to extend this to any dimension. Okay, by an induction on the dimensions. We assume that we have proven it. We have proven star up to dimension d, and now we want to prove star in dimension d plus 1. So this was all very abstract. Next week we'll apply it to some interesting problem, and you will see how it works in practice. It will be much more concrete. So d greater or equal to 1, any dimension. So assume star holds up to dimension d. And let's consider dimension d plus 1. Okay. So since I want to use induction, it will be useful to write the element of the d plus 1 dimensional torus in a suitable way. So u in t d plus 1 L will be written as u is equal to I t with I which is in t1 L and t which is in tdl. Okay. Any point in t d plus 1, I can first give its first coordinate and then the d remaining coordinates. Okay, I do it this way. And I will also use the notation. I will, instead of writing it for the corresponding reflection, you remember when I have a function and apply, I put it in the right cell with this notation. This I will just write it as it. Like that. So with this I can prove the claim. It's actually not very hard. It's ugly to write down, but it's conceptually very simple. Okay, so let's do it. So we start with the product overall u in t d plus 1 L of fu u under this measure mu, Taylor. Okay. We start with this guy. This I can write using this notation it. It's the product. Okay, it's the expected value of the product over I in T1D, T1L, product over T in TDL, F, IT. Right, just not done anything special. Now let me just change things slightly. So this, first I can put parentheses here, doesn't change anything. Right? Now this reflecting F IT to the cell IT, I can do it in two ways. I can first make all the reflection along the first coordinate direction, and then under the other ones, or yes, well, let's do it this way. So here I have T, and here I have I. Okay, so I'm first taking the image of all my functions. Okay. Here inside, I'm constructing the image, and say if I'm dimension 2. Let me try to explain this properly. Okay, this is I, and this is T. Then what I do is I have my functions f0, 0 up to f 3, 0. Okay, then that's the function we have. Okay, properly symmetrized. And then what? Okay, let me do it like that. So what I do first, it's what is here. So I'm first applying ft many times. So I'm taking this guy and I'm sending it here and there and there. Okay, then I've defined it on all the d-dimensional subtorus here. And then once I've done this, I reflect everything in this direction. by using this thing. Okay, of course it's commutative, so you can do it this way. So it's basically empty what I've written here. So think about it if it's not clear, but it's really very simple. Just the fact that these reflections are commutative. So this is okay. Now what do you have? You have the product over I in the one-dimensional torus of some function here. This function only depends. I should have kept my picture. Okay, this is the direction for I, and this is the direction for t. Okay, and all my functions, they are living in this cube, these functions. Right? They are only, the coordinate I is just in the first block. So that means that these are lambda b local functions in this one-dimensional circle, which is indexed by I. So I can just apply. So if I call this G. If I call this G, I just have the expected value of the product over I of G moved to the cell I. So I can apply the one-dimensional version of the chessboard estimate. So chessboard estimate dimension 1. Okay, this is smaller than the product over I in T1L. And then we have the expected value of the product over J in T1L, product over TBL, F, I, T, J, mu. No need for this, but then I need, this will be B over L. Okay. I've just applied the chessboard estimate, which we have proved before in the one-dimensional case for this one-dimensional product. Okay. Then this I can rewrite as product I in T1L. This does not move, but this guy I can write it. I will interchange the products. I have product over T in TDL, product over J in T1L, F IT J T mu and everything to power B over L. Right, I've just interchanged the two products, put parentheses, and use the fact that applying J first and T afterwards, or T first and J afterwards, the same thing. Okay. And now I have a product over the d-dimensional torus of some function which only depends on the first blocks in the d-dimensional torus. And therefore, I can apply the chessboard estimate dimension D. It's okay up to dimension D. It's just in dimension D plus 1 that we don't know if it works. So I apply the chessboard estimate in dimension D. And what does this tell me? It tells me that I have the product over I in T1L. And then I take out the product over T in TDL. And then the expected value of the product over S in TDL. Product over J in T1L, F, I, T, and then JS, mu, and then I get a B over L to the power D, which composed with this gives me a B over L to the power D plus 1. Okay. So I get this, and then you just have to see that this I can write it as product over U in the torus in dimension D plus 1. This I can write as the product over V in the D plus 1 dimensional torus, T D plus 1. And this function here, then it becomes just F of U, V. Right? And then you recognize this is nothing but the D plus 1 dimensional chessboard estimate that we have proved. Okay. This is smaller than, this is just the D plus 1 dimensional chessboard estimate. And this concludes the proof of this estimate. Just write that and we stop with this. functional version of the chessboard estimate. Okay. So we use the fact, in a sense, we have homogenized the function first in one direction, in one dimension, and then the d remaining dimensions, we could do both because we knew how to work with chessboard estimate up to dimension d, and this gives you the homogenization dimension d plus 1. Okay, so I will stop with that, and next week we will work out a nice application of this technique.